rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
Hello and welcome to Friday's edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. This is your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. Guys, today we have an amazing show lined up for you today. Heather McDonald is joining us. She is with the Thomas W. Smith Fellow, or she is a Thomas W. Smith Fellow at the Manhattan Institute, also a contributing editor of City Journal and the author of the newly published book, which I just got. Have not read yet, but at least you will be able to see it. And I'm going to ask you to buy it just because we all know that Heather McDonald's books are reference books that we can go through and read and pretend like we're smarter than we actually are. So that's why I love getting her material. But the name of the book is When Race Trumps Merit: How the Pursuit of Equity Sacrifices Excellence, Destroys Beauty, and Threatens Lives. And before we get to Heather first, let me talk to you real quickly about our sponsors today. MyPillow. Mike Lindell has built a fabulous business at mypillow.com. You know, he's a patriot providing American jobs, American manufacturing. Well, his latest is the new MyPillow 2.0. It's just as, actually, it's more comfortable than the original MyPillow, if you could believe it. It has a temperature regulating fabric that surrounds it now, but it still has the original patented feeling. So now the pillow is softer, smoother, and cooler. You're going to absolutely love it. All you have to do is go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Carl, C-A-R-L, put that in the radio listener square, and you will get the buy one, get one free offer. Buy one, get one free offer. Or you can give them a call at 800-858-0263. That is 800-858-0263. Also, guys, we know that we need to be inspired right now. I mean, what we're witnessing in America, what we're experiencing in America, I did not think I would live to experience, frankly. We all need times of inspiration. So I want to talk to you about the movie Pardoned by Grace. From the makers of Graham Family Films comes a powerful and inspiring true story that's going to touch your heart and renew your faith. I want to introduce you to the movie Pardoned by Grace. It's the incredible journey of Scott Heiberger that's played by actor Joey Lawrence, a convicted criminal turned prison minister who defies all the odds and receives an unlikely pardon to continue his ministry on the outside. Featuring Grammy Award-winning singer, songwriter Michael W. Smith as Heiberger's pastor, Pardoned by Grace showcases the transformative power of redemption and the boundless reach of God's love. You can watch Pardoned by Grace on Salem Now. And when you purchase a copy at salemnow.com, a DVD will be donated to Scott Heiberger's nonprofit prison organization called Behind the Wire Ministries, which provides hope and support to the incarcerated. Together, we can share the power of faith and forgiveness for those who need it most. You can visit salemnow.com, salemnow.com, salemnow.com. Purchase your DVD there, and then again, a portion of that, the portion of that sale will be donated to Scott Heiberger's ministry, Behind the Wire Ministries. Now, without any further ado, because we have her for a short period of time, Heather McDonald, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show podcast.
It's great being with you, Carl. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, Heather. Listen, I got to ask you right off the bat. I remember when we spoke last year. And I asked you about Mayor Eric Adams. He had just become mayor of New York City. I think if I recall correctly, you were withholding judgment. He had said some promising things. I think he's been a complete and utter disaster. Am I wrong? And I said I thought he would be a complete and utter disaster at the time. Am I wrong, Heather McDonald?
Carl, you were right. You were right then. You're right now. He's been a non-entity. He has had no effect on the city's quality of life, on public safety. The Post regularly recounts his late night carousing at various night spots. Now, maybe one can do both, but he is simply torn between a sort of a business support that wants him to stand up for public safety and then wanting to play the race card, wanting to demagogue on various crime issues, and that has basically paralyzed him.
This is honestly, it's so. I hate to say this, but I got to say it just because it's true. Whenever there's a black left-leaning leader, I can predict that it's going to be a disaster. You can call me a racist, call me Uncle Tom sellout. I really don't care. The facts are the facts. And I'm tired of, I think, more people being victimized through crime and even murder. I mean, going so far as murder because you have these woke mayors, these woke DAs, many times that are minorities that buy into this social justice crap and do nothing but harm the Black community. And Heather, actually, that's what I want to speak with you about today. You wrote, is it called an essay, the City Journal, on race and crime, a counterfactual narrative, or is it a column?
Oh, I have no idea. I guess it's long enough to be called an essay, but it's just sort of my effort to get facts out there, Carl.
Okay, well, I love it regardless. But you break this stuff down where I wish. I'm not a commie, Heather, but I wish people were forced to read your.
I agree.
to read
Please,
your.
Yes, I'll make you the commissar. Yeah, I will obey your will, Carl. I trust you.
Oh.
I don't trust other people, but I trust you. So for once, we'll have an enlightened despot.
I appreciate that, but it's just frustrating to me because I realize that lives are at stake. And the stuff that you write about just makes it so clear. Let's get on to this counterfactual narrative that you've written about. You can find it at City Journal. I believe it's cityjournal.org. cityjournal.org. So you can check that out. And again, I'm speaking with Heather McDonald. Go out and get her new book, When Race Trumps Merit, How the Pursuit of Equity Sacrifices Excellence, Destroys Beauty, and Threatens Lives. And I love the cover, by the way, too, just sleek and clean. So I love that. But knocking on the door while Black, existing while Black. You spoke about this case, Ralph Yarl, and there's some new cases I want to speak to you about too, Heather. But Ralph Yarl, 16-year-old, from all indications, he appears to be a solid young kid, but he made a horrible mistake, in my opinion. You go to someone's door at night, and he went to this guy's Andrew Lester's home. Andrew Lester, 84 years old. Who knows, probably suffering from dementia. I have two, an in-law parent and my dad that are suffering with the beginning stages of that. Parkinson's for my dad. They see hallucinations. People don't put this stuff into account. I don't know if that's Andrew Lester's case. Someone comes to your door at night. I got to be honest with you, Heather. Somebody comes to my door at night. I'm that age. I'm scared. It might be the same. It might be the same end.
Right. This should not be seen as a race issue, but the left immediately made this all about white homeowner shoots Black, knocking on the door while Black. In the meantime, we had a whole set of other trespass shootings where the racial configuration of victim and shooter did not match up to the preferred left-wing narrative. White on white, Black on Black. In none of those shootings did the media ever reveal the race of the shooter and the victim. Only with the Ralph Yarl, Andrew Lester case did it infallibly say Black victim, white homeowner. Because that's the only allowable narrative that is so counterfactual, Carl, as you well know. The reason that Blacks die of homicide at elevated rates recently in the wake of what the Journal of American Medical Association calls the coronavirus pandemic, and I'm going to translate that for your viewers, Carl. It's in the wake of the George Floyd race riots when the police backed off of constitutional policing. Here's what the homicide disparity is. Black juveniles die of gun homicide at 100 times the rate of white juveniles.
Say that again, please. I was not aware of that. I don't know how I've missed that. You said 100 times more.
I know how you've missed it, Carl, because the media will not cover these shootings. There are dozens of drive-by shootings killing Blacks every single day that never get covered. Juveniles 17 and younger, since the George Floyd race riots, Black juveniles die of gun homicide at 100 times the rate of whites. And who's killing them? Not the police, not whites, but other Blacks. If any of those had been killed by whites, we would have heard about it. But the media, it's an extraordinary thing, Carl. You would have thought, if we looked at this before we knew anything about the world, and you said, okay, I'm going to be a civil rights activist. Am I going to stand up for Black criminals or Black victims? I would have thought they would have stood up for Black victims, but the civil rights activists stand up for Black criminals. And that's why we have this phony narrative that it is whites that are threatening Black lives, not Black kids who have not been socialized by a two-parent family and learned to restrain their impulses.
This gets so frustrating, and I have to ask the question: at what point, or do you ever in your studies, do you see Blacks, just good American Blacks, that are living in some of these neighborhoods that are just like, hey, we're sick of this crap. We know that this narrative is just fake. But I don't hear enough of those voices. You always hear what I call Big Perm, Al Sharpton, and Benjamin Crump. You hear these voices, but you don't hear the Blacks that are being victimized and saying, hold up, wait a minute. It isn't white people that are coming in and executing us. It's our own people. It frustrates me to no end that I'll get called the Uncle Tom and all this and that. And I'm like, no, actually, I'm the one that's sharing information that'll save your life. Do you get any Blacks out there? Are you seeing them? Are you seeing a growing number of Blacks that are saying this is bullcrap?
Well, I'm certainly seeing them, and I've made a point, Carl, in my reporting of giving voice to those good, hardworking people that live in high crime neighborhoods, that want the police, that love the police, that beg for more police protection. The people that CNN never hears, New York Times never hears, they are out there. I mean, I remember being at a police community meeting in the 41st precinct in the South Bronx, and an elderly lady in a fantastic hat getting up and out of nowhere, apropos of nothing, saying, how lovely when we see the police. They are my friends.
Wow.
Those people deserve to be able to live free from fear. That having been said, Carl, it is the case that there are also people in the Black community that, for whatever reason, and I sort of understand not wanting to be the target of outside criticism or being publicly self-critical, that do continue to vote for the racial victimology narrative. And we saw that most recently and most depressingly in Chicago with the runoff election between Brandon Johnson and Paul Vallis. And the precincts that voted most consistently for Brandon Johnson, the anti-cop activist, were in the South Side and West Side, the highest crime precincts. So there's many voices out there. I'm sure you've been in contact with Sheila and Kendall Quarles in Minnesota. They're like yourself. Well, I recommend that you track them down and have them on. Quarles. They are absolutely eloquent, like you are, in support of personal responsibility, two-parent families, raising kids with a respect for the law.
Unbelievable. To your point on Chicago, I watched this video a couple of weeks ago, Heather, and there was a Black woman. There was if you recall the story of a few weeks ago, these teens just destroying downtown Chicago, wreaking havoc all over the place. They beat up on this young interracial couple. There is a Black woman that actually steps in, grabs these kids, has these kids get inside of her car, takes them to safety. And she said the video that we saw was actually the latter part of the attack. Apparently, there was another lady around getting attacked, that the young Black man that happened to be dating a young white woman was trying to protect that lady, said something. And so they ended up beating him up and his girlfriend up. Unbelievable. But the fascinating thing, I watched this interview with this woman to the end, and she was a Black woman, really nice lady, spiritual lady. Apparently, she had voted for Lori Lightfoot, and I'm assuming the new mayor-elect Brandon Johnson. And when she took them to the police station and told them what had transpired, they said they couldn't do anything because of the laws or policies or whatever. And she said she was absolutely shocked. There was a disconnect. This was a good woman, but there was a disconnect where she didn't realize the policies that she was voting for were responsible for the chaos that she was seeing in the street.
Well, that's true of practically every American voter. This is not a South Side problem. People are not connected to the news. It's very few people that are actually interested in public affairs. So I'm not going to single her out, but it is absolutely the case. But of course, I mean, the Chicago Tribune does a pretty good job of covering crime, actually. They do cover the shootings, but it would be hard if you're, say, reading the New York Times to understand what Lightfoot and other progressive prosecutors like Kim Foxx in Chicago or Alvin Bragg in New York are doing. But it is incumbent on you. I mean, if you have these shootings in your neighborhood, and I mean, it is just stunning. It is stunning. America turns its eyes away. It does not want to look at Black victims because they are being killed overwhelmingly by Black perpetrators. And we have this phony narrative that it is whites that are threatening Blacks. And the result is more Black victims. These heartbreaking in Kansas City. We had Benjamin Crump step in, and this whole thing of, oh, now we have existing while Black and knocking on the door while Black, and this bathos that came out about how, and President Biden jumps in about how, again, Black parents have to fear for their children. Where were these activists when Black children, 1-year-old, 2-year-olds, Tyron Patton, 1-year-old, gunned down in 2020, Legend Telefero, 4-year-old Black child, gunned down in 2020? Nobody said their names. The double standards and the hypocrisy is absolutely nauseating and tragic.
It is amazing to me. And again, I'm speaking to Heather McDonald of the Manhattan Institute. Go out and get her new book, When Race Trumps Merit, How the Pursuit of Equity Sacrifices Excellence, Destroys Beauty, and Threatens Lives. You can see it here on camera. It's a very beautiful book. Although, Gabe, you're going to be a little frustrated with me. I forgot to turn on one of my podcast lights. So if I look a little darker than usual, that might be the reason. Sometimes crazy stuff goes on in the podcast world here, Heather. It's yesterday I was in the middle of the podcast and my sign literally dropped.
Well, I don't have a ring light. I have a friend who keeps begging to give me a ring light. He says I look like I'm in Guantanamo Bay, and I just don't want another damn piece of equipment. So you can just put up with it. So we both look in our cave. That's good.
I hate the ring light. It blinds me as I'm sitting here talking to you. It's
good to know. That gives me another excuse to put him off.
Yeah. Find a better side light or underlight of some sort, but not a ring light. I hate those things. Anyway, getting back to your columns from City Journal on race and crime and counterfactual narrative. You spoke about what was happening in Kansas City. You outlined the stats beautifully. You talked about this Imani Perry at Princeton University. She quoted in The Atlantic, the terror and grace of raising Black children in the United States. Millions have protested the, quote, premature deaths of Black innocents. I mean, from academia to the Al Sharptons of the world to the mayor of KC, Quentin Lucas, that have all come out, and they all use this race narrative when a Black person is involved, despite seeing whites killed in their communities. And where did this start, Heather? I feel like this may have started during Barack Obama's administration, because I feel like I can almost clearly remember, although I can't recall when all of a sudden, just speaking of victims, went from a victim to a Black victim, a white perpetrator.
Well, and the issue is not when there's a Black involved, it's when there's a white perpetrator and Black. When there's Black on Black, they do not pay attention. I mean, I have another example in here in March 2019. Where was it? Atlanta, there was a Black on Black doorbell, mistaken apartment shooting. And the Times reports that without mentioning the race of either. And the original reporting in Atlanta didn't mention the race of either. So it's only one particular kind. I would say this has been going on for a while. I remember in the 1990s, Carl, when newspapers stopped printing the race of criminal suspects who were still at large because they were so disproportionately Black. And that was really a violation, I think, of some kind of public duty, because if there's a criminal who's still at large, you want the public to know all available relevant information about him. And the press decided, no, we're not going to give the public that information because we don't want them to, they would say, have a false impression, but in fact, it's a correct impression, sadly, of who's committing urban street crime. And so the type of concealment that is going on now is a long time coming, but it certainly did exacerbate under Obama, and then after the George Floyd race riots, the country simply lost its mind over phantom racism, and we saw the police back off in 2020, the largest single year increase in homicide in this nation's history, 29% increase in homicide in 1 year, and the victims again have overwhelmingly been Black, but nobody cares because their perpetrators are also Black. You could remove, you could remove all police shootings of Black men and all white shootings of Black men, and you would have almost no effect on the Black death by homicide rate.
Man.
These are side issues, absolute side issues. In 2021, there were about 8 so-called unarmed Blacks who were shot by the police out of a Black population of about 40 to 44 million, depending on how you characterize it. And a police officer in 2021 was 400 times more likely to be killed by a Black male than an unarmed Black was to be killed by a police officer. So everything we think we know about crime and policing and race from the mainstream media is wrong. And as long as we continue these lies, more Black lives are going to be taken.
Let me, I know you got to go here, Heather, but let me ask you to just quickly speak on this. You mentioned Kailyn Gillis. She got no media attention, hardly at all. Pulled into the wrong driveway, and she was shot, but she was shot by a white man. So no big deal. No big deal there. You talk about the real story that exists in Kansas City. You really broke the stats down. I mean, you get very deep. Please go check out this column at City Journal on race and crime, a counterfactual narrative. But the numbers are astounding, and now all of a sudden I can't find them.
Well, I've got them. I mean,
okay.
If you want them, as far as victims, homicide victims, Black are 60%.
There we go.
Last year, there were 60% of Black homicide victims, even though they're only 26.5% of Kansas City population. This year, they've been 75% of all victims. So they are being killed at enormously higher rates than their population would predict. But if you look at who's committing homicide, among all known homicide suspects, Blacks are 72% of all homicide suspects, even though they're 26.5% of the population, and whites are 18% of homicide suspects. So what does this mean? It's, again, these are difficult facts to talk about, Carl. They make people uncomfortable, but if we call facts racist, we're not going to get to the bottom of this problem.
Exactly.
It is the case in Kansas City that Blacks are 9 times as likely to commit homicide as white. So when Ralph Yarl, a good law, it looks like a law-abiding teenager, as we said, showed up at Andrew Lester's house, if Lester did feel more concern that a tall Black teenager was there than he would have at a white teenager, it's very tragic for Ralph Yarl what happened. And this is a heartbreaking shooting, and thank heavens it looks like Yarl is going to survive. But it would not have been statistically irrational on Lester's part to be more concerned about a Black teen than a white teen, given the massive disparities in criminal offending. And we go around pretending that only racism is responsible for the types of judgments that people make about crime risk, when those judgments are in fact based on actual disparities in criminal offending. And the solution to people making those judgments and saying, I'm going to be more worried, is, at this point, we all cue Jesse Jackson saying that he feels relieved if it's white kids walking behind him on a dark street rather than Black kids. The solution to those types of judgments is to bring the crime rate down. It's not to bash the people who are drawing the logical inference from facts as racist.
Absolutely. And man, it's so well said. You speak of interracial violence too. I know you have to go. But man, guys, please just
87%. Blacks commit 87% of all interracial violence between blacks and whites on blacks. So I have a list in my article of the things to do while white that are put you at risk. Jogging while white,
man.
shopping while white, parking your car while white, riding your bike while white. These are all things that have resulted in serious assault or death on the part of whites at the hands of black perpetrators that never get talked about because it doesn't fit the narrative. The driving while black or the knocking on the door while black, yes, all of those incidents where an innocent black victim is shot or his life is taken are heartbreaking. They're terrible. But to pretend that that is the way that blacks die is an utter lie, and our leaders are lying to us, Carl.
And it's dangerous. It's dangerous. It's getting more blacks killed. I mean, this is it drives me crazy. It's literally getting blacks murdered.
I know. Black Lives Matter is a fraud. Black Lives Matter is an utter fraud. They do not care about black lives. It's empirically provable. They do not care about black lives.
And
10,000 blacks murdered in 2020. How many were protested by the activists? None.
God, man, good God, that says it all. That's almost a punch to the gut. And this Jordan Neely thing. I mean, Heather, let me just say this. I think what the left is doing is seriously trying to get to a point where they criminalize self-defense.
Right.
And it's my opinion. Jordan Neely, he would be alive were it not for Alvin Bragg, the policies of the New York City Mayor Eric Adams. I call her the nanny of New York, Kathy Hochul. If it weren't for those three, it's my opinion that Jordan Neely would be alive, perhaps medicated in a jail cell somewhere.
Right.
But he'd be alive, in my opinion.
Right. This is not a race issue. It is a failure of government. The vagrancy problem is solvable. It's solvable. You enforce the law. You say you are not allowed to camp out on streets. You're not allowed to colonize public space. Here in New York City, we are mandated by a court to provide shelter to anybody who asks on demand. You don't get to have it both ways. You don't get an entitlement to shelter and yet get to turn it down and colonize public space, threaten people. We've had so many subway pushings where people are pushed onto tracks by high mentally ill vagrants, assaulted in subways, shot. There's no reason to put up with this. But the government has what I call the great inversion, whether it's in California or New York. It puts the so-called interests and rights of the criminal and the deviant ahead of those of the law-abiding and the hardworking. And the people that are trying to work, get to their jobs safely, have their children go to school, they are at the bottom of the pecking order of government attention.
Unfortunately, I mean, so well said, but unfortunately, spot on. Again, Heather McDonald, go out and get the book, When Race Trumps Merit, How the Pursuit of Equity Sacrifices Excellence, Destroys Beauty, and Threatens Lives. And frankly, guys, just go out and get her books. Literally, I just use them as a reference book because I want to sound smart. So when I know that people are lying, I'm like, okay, what did Heather write? Or I go to the City Journal and then I get her stats real quick. And then I spew them off and they're like, Carl, you're brilliant. I'm like, yes, I know. Thank you. But it's Heather McDonald. So I'll go out and read her material wherever she is. Please find her. Heather, if you'll just stick with us for a minute so we can make sure that you're uploaded. Gabe will give us the word. Guys, listen, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Please find me wherever you go to get your podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify. You can subscribe to our Rumble page, The Carl Jackson Show. We're also on YouTube, The Carl Jackson Show. Wherever I am on social media, The Carl Jackson Show is where you go to find me. Heather, where can people find you? If they want to find you online, what's the best place to go to find you?
Well, I don't even know my Twitter handle, but I do have one. So if you just Google Heather McDonald in Twitter, that should get there. And Carl, I may dig up the facts, but you put them over. So that's where I'm concerned is the real talent and brilliance. So thank you much for giving me a platform.
Absolutely. I pray to God that more people do. I pray to God that more people really start paying attention to your work. Honestly, you're doing amazing work. I mean, you are one of the fighters out there. A lot of people use your work to fight back against the left. We just need more. We need even more people to read Heather Mac Donald's work, use her information in order to fight back against the left and to save this country, save your city. For God's sakes, I'd love to be able to go to New York. I'm scared as heck to go to New York. And I grew up in Compton. I was crazy. So it's just crazy. Gabe, let us know when we're up. I want to make sure that we let Heather go, but I don't want to lose the video. Guys, this is just podcast talk. I'm being real with you. What's going on behind the scenes here. Okay. All right. So, all right. Well, listen, I appreciate you tuning in. We'll close out the show so Gabe can make sure that I have this up. Until next time, don't grow weary doing good. God bless you.